see. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we ask for your help tonight that we can pay attention and learn what it is you have to say. There's so many distractions going on right now, Lord. So many things that could just hinder us from clinging into you, Lord. Could the enemy allow the enemy a foothold in our life, deter us from following everywhere you're leading, Lord. Don't let the enemy get in any way. Lord, help me tonight to be able to remember the things that I've studied and teach clearly. I ask that those that are here, Lord, would grow in an understanding of who you are through seeing your actions in the history of the church. Lord, I ask that you protect us all, that you give us clear understanding that you are with us, that everything we go through serves the greater purpose if we belong to you. And Lord, just help us tonight to give our all in studying your word. Thank you, Jesus, ahead of time for your name we pray, Master. Amen. Amen. All right, we're on Acts 16, and I'll go as fast as I can with it. What particular city are we in right now in Acts 16?
Is it Lystra?
No.
How do you say it?
No.
No.
Not Derby, not Lystra, not Iconium.
Not Iconium.
Nope. We're in Acts 16.
Well, that's the one that's listed.
Nope.
T-S-I-A-T-I-R.
We're in Acts 16.
Macedonia?
We're in Macedonia, correct. But that's kind of like saying we're in Alabama right now. So we're getting there. That's good. So far, you're the most accurate. Lord, good job. Troas? No, we're not in Troas. That's not Macedonia. Keep going. Philippi. Good job. Eventually, when you guys can get it. Philippi. Now we do know Philippi from another place in the New Testament that Paul does what? What do we know about Philippi? What else do we know about it? It was the letter that Paul wrote to who? The Philippians. The timing of this is heavily debated. Tradition, and what everybody used to say was he writes it roughly 10 years later while he's imprisoned in Rome. We do know he's in prison. Caesarea has been proposed, but no evidence of that. And more modern scholars are actually opting for an unknown imprisonment in Ephesus, which he writes much closer to the time after he'd been on this visit now. We don't know for certain. I'm not strong either way, but I would say either Rome or Ephesus, either 10 years or much closer, one of the two. I'm okay with either viewpoint on that. At this point in time, there are three main characters in Acts 16 that are developed in Philippi. One you can group, but anyway you look at it, let's throw them out there. Who are the three main storylines in Philippi? One we'll introduce tonight. You might not know him yet, but the other two you should know, because I've stayed on one of them for a little while. I've been quoted to death about 4 or 5 times, but one of them a few times. So, but who are they? Who are the main characters? Not the missionary team, because the missionary team right now is made up of Paul, Silas, Timothy, and who else is joined? Who's joined the team at this point? Luke. Very good. Dr. Luke. Now, Dr. Luke, we know from the we passages. Once we leave Philippi, Dr. Luke will stay in Philippi. So he's there right now. All right? Who are the three main storyline scenes as far as characters in Philippi that come up? Who is one lady that we talked about particularly? Lydia.
Lydia the Purple.
Lydia the Purple, very good. And she was a wealthy Gentile businesswoman who was associated with the Jewish faith. She inevitably opens up her house once she is saved after they meet with her, and that becomes the home church in Philippi. After Lydia and her purple dyeing money-making business she has, after her, who we come across?
There's a girl that was the fortune teller.
A demonically possessed psychic, fortune teller, diviner. She had a python spirit, which means if it was any way from the ancient times, it at least initially originated from the oracles of Delphi, the ability to speak from your stomach, but having a real spirit, oracles, telling the future. Well, what happens to her? She runs around saying what? To Paul. As he's going to the synagogue, and Silas going to the synagogue, she daily follows him and says what? Just roughly, not exact word for word, but roughly.
Servants of the Most High God.
Okay.
They don't specify which.
Very good, because at that time period, Most High God could refer to Yahweh as the Old Testament sense, but it also carried in a Greek or Roman culture the highest god of the pantheon, the chief god of the pantheon. In Greek culture, often used for Zeus and way to salvation. So it really could take it in truth and distort it and turn it. Well, once this happens, what happens once they? I guess you can say,
They exercise
it, they cast out the girl's spirit. Then what can she no longer do? She can't produce finances for who?
With her owners.
Her owners, okay. So how do they react to that?
Hey, bad.
They're not very happy about that. So they do what?
Beat them and throw them in jail.
They get them dragged before the magistrate and beaten and thrown in jail. The important part to remember going into this, though, is the charges they bring. Acts 16, verse 20 and 21. Remember these charges. They will be huge because you need to know what's going on at this time and how it plays out. Read Acts 16, 20 through 21, Jacynda.
And when they had brought them to the magistrates, they said, "These men are Jews, and they are disturbing our city. They advocate customs that are not lawful for us as Romans to accept or practice." Now,
what's going on here is, this is actually three charges, and one of them probably has to do with what's going on with Rome in AD 49 AD, if Gene was here. So this is one of these things going on. Remember, Philippi identifies itself as Rome. We are little Rome, we do everything Rome does. What happens in 49 AD in Rome? What massive historical event happens?
They run all the Jews out.
They run all the Jews out. Yeah, the emperor of the time runs all the Jews out. You can't be there. We don't like you. Your religion's messed up. You don't accept our ancient Roman beliefs. You can't be here anymore. So already we're seeing here these racially motivated Jews, because Paul's possibly wearing his, we don't know, maybe wearing his rabbi outfit, but he's very identifiable as a Jew. And these Jews, again, are disturbing our city. Very racially motivated the way this is worded. They're disrupting our peace. And they're advocating laws that are not lawful, that are threatening the way of Roman life here in Philippi. So we're going to play on the nationalism of Rome and the xenophobia, fear of strangers, of these Jews who we already know we don't like anyway. And we're going to truck this charge up to hide the real concern of what? The financial loss.
Right.
Keep all that in mind. Now we have the verse 22 through 24. Read that for us, Jacynda.
the crowd joined in attacking them, and the magistrates tore the garments off them and gave orders to beat them with rods. And when they had inflicted many blows upon them, they threw them into prison, ordering the jailer to keep them safely. Having received this order, he put them into the inner prison and fastened their feet in the stocks.
Now, a few things to go over here. Now, what kind of citizenship do Paul and Silas both possess?
Roman.
Can you do this to a Roman?
No.
No, not without due process, and you're really into that. You can't beat them like this. Why, and this becomes this debate, or if, do they invoke the Roman citizenship here? Well, some people say, yeah, they do, but the chaos. The magistrates can't hear them, they're trying to, but it's just so loud, because remember, what the crowd is doing is not mob violence, it's mob chanting, saying, take them and arrest them, we want them away and all that. So some people say they're trying to, but the magistrates just can't hear them. That's thrown out by a lot of people. While it's possible, it won't hurt my feelings if you got a study Bible that says it. Most reject that. And most believe what they're doing here is actually not invoking your rights based on a carefully calculated decision not to. There are a couple of reasons for this, okay? One, at this point in time, what do you think would happen if, let's say he invokes his rights and they listen? What would they have to prove right here in this situation? They won't have to later, but here they do. If they invoke these rights, what do they need to prove right here?
That they was.
That they was. You won't have to later based on certain circumstances, but here you were. How would you do that back then? Well, you normally often, you could carry out this little placement card, but they might not even take that, so what you very often have to do is send somebody back to the place of origin you come from, Paul B. Tarsus, get the evidence from the documented people, and come back. What would that do? That would take what? Time. Lots of time. And we might not have that time. We don't want to do that. Two, what some commentaries point out is, this would strain the relations with any Jewish community in the area because their charge is anti-Judaism, anti-Jewish ideology. Okay? And if you say this, you say, no, I'm not Jewish, I'm disconnecting myself from them, and I'm claiming Roman citizenship, and I'm erasing my Jewish identity. Well, if you try to speak in any local synagogues or any Jewish communities, what would happen? They'd be offended. They'd be like, we don't want to hear you, because the reason you're getting in is you're supposed to have an answer to our Judaism and fulfillment of that Jewish Messiah. We don't want to hear you anymore. So that could be something like that. Another reason is it could jeopardize the message of Christ based on some legal terminology. We won't get into that. And last but not least, they wanted to show the people they're converting that the gospel is worth suffering for. It's not, you're going to have to go through hardship. And the fact of the matter is, what if this happened to some other people, some other Jews that were around, or other converts that weren't Roman citizens? They couldn't invoke that. So they had to learn that suffering for the gospel is all part of it. So they don't here. They will later. For a reason. Okay? And there'll be reasons for all this. Okay? Next, we got the jailer issue. Now, traditionally, and this is what I've even mentioned before, the traditional view is that the jailer was retired military. More modern scholars, or at least a few, I know Schnabel, Keener, and a few others, reject that. Schnabel proposing, based on some documentation in Philippi, that he would have actually been a city-owned slave that had a lot of wealth still. This is debated. It's irrelevant either way. I'm cool with either line of thoughts. I know traditionally I was always taught it was retired military. That's kind of what I stick with because I was taught that. But there's been some documentation that's caused that to come under fire. That's understandable. One way or another, he is connected to the city itself, and he's got an exceptionally bad reputation. All jailers did. All jailers had bad reputations. They were known to be as inhumane as wild beasts. They were known for their savagery. They were known for their cruelty. They were known to be as unmerciful and make it as hard as they could on you. This is going to be a key later on when basically he's going to ask a question to the missionaries. Okay? So keep in mind, this is not a nice guy. He is cruel. Well, what exactly would the missionaries had to have endured? Well, one, they were beaten and they were imprisoned in exceptionally harsh conditions. Okay? This was meant, what was the purpose? What was the purpose of public beatings and imprisonments right here? What's the purpose? To do what? Demoralize. They want to do more. They want to publicly shame, which in an honor-shame culture is huge. Because remember, people won't associate with you if you've been shamed. They will do business with you. They won't talk to you. And if you're trying to grow a new Christian movement, what's going to happen to that if you get publicly shamed? It's going to hurt it badly. So this is all going to play out. It's meant to humiliate and deter others from doing what you're doing. And so what they do, they cast out a demon and preach about Jesus. Okay? So it's going to deter others from associating with all this. Well, so they throw them into the inner prison. What is that? What's the inner prison?
That's deep down where the nasty stuff is.
That's right. We've actually excavated the prison in Philippi, and it would have been pretty rough. Okay, we know that the conditions would have been totally dark, no light for them, or at least very little. Totally hard floors and stocks. Okay, no food. Your friends had to bring you food, and a horrible smell. And remember, they're locked in stocks, and they're meant to be locked in stocks. They would have probably been at least 12 hours, but if you're locked in stocks, what can you not do?
Go to the bathroom.
Very good. And if you do got to go, what do you got to do?
Yeah, right there.
Right there. If you got open wounds, you're doing that right there. What's going to happen to those open wounds?
Yeah, you help.
Yes, that's all meant to do all this. And not only that, there could be formed in torture devices. We don't know if theirs were, but others were. But this is meant to be really cruel and bad. Okay, but let's see how the missionaries respond to their situation. Verse 25 and 26.
But at midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundations of the prison were shaking. Immediately all the doors were open, and everyone's chains were loose.
All right. The setting here is going to be divine intervention taking place in the context of an imprisoned Paul and Silas while they are praising God near midnight, showing the power of the Spirit to give joy in all circumstances. But the meaning of this theologically is going to create this idea of an example of a manifestation of divine power that leads to freedom. But ask yourself this: who's going to be freed in this story? Well,
No, I go be sitting there.
there you go. So who's going to be freed in this story? The jailer. Very good. So it's playing off. Very good. That's what this is doing. Although the purpose of the divine intervention is not to physically free the missionaries, but to spiritually rescue the jailer. Okay. What they are doing. This prayer and singing is in imperfect tense, which means it's an extended period. Hymns to God are songs that are going to proclaim God's virtues and deeds. And very often we're going to look back at times where other past godly people, believers, have been rescued. Well, what are some examples we can throw out there? Think of the Old Testament.
With Daniel.
Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These are big ones. Who's another person who would be a good person to read if you're going through tough times and you want to know God's there? What's a good book to read as well?
Moses.
That's right. And Psalms. That's another one. They would sing these. They would look back to various rescue situations. Now, the fact that we're praying right here, this is interesting because this could mean they were praying while they were singing is possible, but it also could mean through their prayers they sang praise, which would carry the idea of they reiterated God's virtues and deeds, formulated in a prayer that were sung in a tune. Very often what you would do is you'd be praying and you'd be kind of singing, but you'd be quoting these stories, whether they be the Psalms, David's deliverance, things like that, Daniel and them. and you be singing them in prayer type form and asking God, we know what you can do. You know, this is your will, do it to us. But your will be done. And you're still praising and recognizing His hands on the situation. And many think by this time they're beginning to compilate new Christian songs. And in these Christian songs, you're singing about this type of situation. Who would you be singing about, and what about Him would you be singing?
Well, you'd be singing about Jesus.
Jesus, and what particular aspect of Him that He is known for in this situation would you talk about?
He rose in His resurrection.
He rose again, and He's the deliverer. He is the deliverer. And so you could apply it to that. Something along those lines. Well, then all of a sudden, in the midst of this, we'll call it praise, because that covers everything. In the midst of this praise, there's what? A large earthquake. A megas seismos. What does that mean? It's big. It's really, really big. Yes, now I'll say this. This is highly debated. And leave it or take it. Although few, I'm of the few in this camp. Given the past rescue missions and given how Luke and others describe angels at the tomb, I think an angel caused this. But it doesn't say it, so anybody wants to criticize that, they can as far as other scholars go. But the fact is, every time so far, there's been prison situations, angels involved. And what do we see at the tomb? We know angels cause earthquakes, so it's not beyond reason of doubt. And there are other scholars, and I'm of that camp that think an angel did this, but any way you look at it, doesn't matter. Earthquakes are common in this region, but what's not common about this earthquake?
The size.
The size is not common, that's true. Very big. Yes, the exact location and the timing. As they were singing, where they were being held. That's how you know divine work's going on at this point in time. However, this jailer's reaction is often misunderstood because we need to know how the pagans viewed earthquakes. Based on a pagan worldview, how do you think they looked at earthquakes? What do you think they thought?
It's probably thought they were occurring the wrath of some god.
That's exactly it. The wrath of the gods, bad omens, that's it. Earthquakes were kind of theophanies. One god in particular was Poseidon. He was the sea god, but he's also known as the earth shaker. He caused your earthquakes. Regardless, earthquakes were connected to divine movement and divine action. This will be important for later, okay? Given the worldview the jailer comes from, keep all this in mind. Given that Paul and Silas are in jail for religious crimes, he really quickly could connect the earthquake as a result of the anger of the God they represent. That's all going to come into play in his reaction later, okay? It's going to help explain a few things. The physical effects of the earthquake, it violently shakes the foundation, but the walls don't come down. That's what's kind of crazy. It violently shakes the foundation, the walls don't come down, but what happens? The chains come out of the walls, and the doors come open. So, but the walls don't come down. So this is all part of it, part of this miraculous situation that happens, which is going to lead to verse 27 through 28. Read that for us.
And the keeper of the prison, awaking from sleep and seeing the prison doors open, supposing the prisoners had fled, drew his sword and was about to kill himself. But Paul called with a loud voice, saying, "Do not do yourself no harm, for we are all here."
All right, the jailer awakened. He's not sleeping on the job here. He actually, jailers at that time lived on the premise. Had a parsonage, okay? That's what happened right here. He's living on the premise, so he's probably asleep in his own bed, and he's jolted awake by the earthquake. Well, what do you think the first thing he does is?
Run outside.
Yeah, run outside to see what's going on, and he investigates the prison. Well, what does he see automatically? All the doors are open. All the doors are open, so then he runs in. He naturally assumes the worst because, 99.9999999% of the time, when all the prison doors are open, where the prisoner is going to go? Out the doors, okay? So he naturally assumes this, so he draws his sword to commit suicide. What did we say using his sword for suicide was in Roman thought? It was.
It was an
honorable way to do it. As a matter of fact, you were expected to do it. However, there's one or two reasons here, okay? Yes, is this an example of Code of Justinian 944? Maybe, because the legal consequences were if the prisoners escaped, you suffered the consequences of what they were in prison for, and all of Paul and Silas weren't going to be put to death. Maybe some other guys were, so that's possible. So maybe you don't want to face legal repercussions. However, there were certain clauses in these laws that natural disasters would be an excusable situation that you wouldn't be held accountable for. So other people go that route. And some people think he's just not thinking clearly. He's not thinking that catch clause, that some lawyer's got to file for him. He's just thinking, I don't know what's going to happen. Honor, shame, culture, I'm going to die. He just automatically, he's about to take his own life because he's just not thinking at this point. And right when he's about to do this, what happens in verse 28? Paul calls out, don't do anything evil. We're all here. There's actually bad in the Greek and the ultimate suicide. You can certainly carry that. All the prisoners are still on the premise. Now, here is where a lot of scholarly debate breaks out, particularly from liberals, who think there's no way this can be an historical account. And what they ask is, how in the world could Paul know the jailer was about to kill himself? Now, there are explanations, I'll give them to you in a minute, but let's see if you can guess any of them.
He was looking at it.
Okay, that's one. That's one. He was looking at it. Because what? He can move about, all the doors were open. That is one. That's one plausible answer. What are two other plausible answers?
An angel told him.
Divine insights. That's another one. Divine insights. And third, I'm going to start out there. What would you normally do? What would a jailer likely normally do in this type of situation? Try to kill himself. So natural assumption. It's not like it's a very problematic situation, but people have made it that way. But either he saw him, divine insight, or natural assumption. He knows it's going to happen. And as one scholar says, Acts is a condensed account where we're not given every imaginable detail. There's no reason why we should doubt that Paul knew this, and Luke didn't give us any other further details. That's not problematic. There are a lot of things in Acts we don't get details about. It's summarizing certain situations. So that is not problematic. Anyway, the jailer's reaction to verse 29 through 30.
Then he called for a light, ran in, and fell down trembling before Paul and Silas. And he brought them out and said, Sirs, what must I do to be saved?
So he calls for the lights. You see, turn the light switch on. What's he say?
Probably torches.
Go get me torches. He calls the servants who are there with him, go get them torches. Go get them some torches, okay? He rushed in. What does that mean? He ran where? Inside to the maximum security facility. And he investigates. He doesn't take Paul's word for it. He investigates. Now with great trembling and fear, he falls down before Paul and Silas. He's not worshiping them, but there's a little more to this than him simply going, I like you guys, dear sirs. More than likely, given his worldview, what would he think the earthquake happened from what?
From
angry gods. Okay? And given that their crimes are religious nature, he probably connects the earthquake to these missionaries. Right. He probably thinks, hey, they are representatives of the divine. So out of respect for their status and all he's just witnessed and the fact nobody's gone at this point, he prostrates and falls down before them. That probably plays all that out. And he brings them out. He leads them out of the maximum security cell. Sirs, what must I do to be saved? One or two things. I know this is that classic thing where everybody goes, great Bible line here, we're going to quote it. What must I do to be saved? Yes, Paul's answer is the classic answer. But this question is not necessarily the classic question that's played out to be all the time, okay? This could mean, he's asking about Paul's message. And more than likely, he could have heard Paul talk about it, or the slave girl, when she was doing the proclamation she was making, maybe. And that's very possible. And there are some that think that I have no problem with that. So maybe he is asking, give me more information about that message and that God you represent. However, based on his worldview, what must I do to be saved could also be, what must I do to be spared from the consequences of the wrath of your God you represent? Because I'm a jailer and I've treated you badly. And this, your God's already doing an earthquake, and I'm kind of scared right now. Now, Paul's going to take that and make it right, because it's going to be the right opportunity. But he is probably asking at this point, I'm ready to take religious action. Do I need to go do any sacrifices or do any rituals? Because I know I probably treated you bad. Matter of fact, I did. I'm sorry about that. Is that what I need to do at this point in time to make sure that your God doesn't pour his earthquake wrath out upon me? That's probably where it's coming from.
It's possible he probably heard Saul,
that is the other theory. That's theory one. There's two theories of that. That's theory one, that he would have heard, but the question is at this point in time, is he going to look at it from that perspective, the worldview he's coming from? And this is part of it. And this is where it's fine either way. And it's actually cool either way at this point on that. One of the two. The point of this right here is that no matter how he's doing it, Paul's going to take it and use that as an opportunity to present the message. And so depending on what viewpoint you come from, one way or another, the door's been opened. Whether it be from, if he did hear it, more than likely it would have been from the slave girl's claims, is what most people think. That's possible. Or he's asking from the point of view of, I need to appease this wrath. Any way you look at it, here's going to be the response right here in verse 31 through 34.
So they said, Believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, and you will be saved, you and your household. Then they spoke the word of the Lord to him and to all who were in his house. And he took them to the same hour of the night and washed their stripes. And immediately he and all his family were baptized. Now when he had brought them into his house, he set food before them, and he rejoiced, having believed in God with all his household.
All right. Now, verse 31 is going to demonstrate the purpose of the earthquake. It is the whole thing was meant for a new jail ministry to be set up by Paul and Silas. Okay? And they've got the opportunity now to present the gospel. Okay? What must I do? Well, you must believe in the Lord Jesus, and you will be saved, you and your household. There's a little bit to that, but this certainly carries faith in Jesus, acknowledgement He is Lord, leads to salvation. He's probably elaborating on Jesus' death on the cross for the atonement of sins. You know, all that evil jailer business you do, Jesus' blood will cover, and probably something like that. And then he uses the title Lord. Now, for him to use the title Lord, what must that imply about Jesus' current status? He is what? He's alive. So he's dead, but he's alive because you can't be a dead Lord. That's impossible. So it's playing on his authority and the fact he's been risen and exalted. So he's telling him you need to trust in Jesus for salvation, the authority of his work, and the authority of his person. Luke is clearly summarizing everything that was said at this point. Just a summary statement, okay? Now we've got that issue of the household. Oh boy. What did we say last time we saw this term that comes up with this?
Babies.
Baptism of infants. That's right. That's right. And that's going to come up here as well. But we're going to see here, it should be more clear. More than likely here, we've got the household referring to the fact of the family members and the slaves who were with him helping with earthquake duty. Okay? And that it's referring to everybody there because we know in a minute.
Fetch the torch.
Yes, the slaves and the family. In verse 32, the implication of the household is going to be those who heard the message, the word of the Lord, the message of Jesus as the way to salvation. Okay? And in verse 34, those who probably responded to this message with a sense of understanding and with joy. And I don't know too many infants that listen to me ever preach, just to be honest with you. I don't know any. And I don't know any that have got the ability to reason, understand, and experience the proper reaction. So therefore, this, at least in my theological opinion, cannot refer to infants whatsoever. You got to throw it out. Anyway, he washed their wombs. And he fed them in verse 34. Okay, do you know how in other places when someone was saved, we would have visible manifestation of the Spirit, whether speaking in foreign languages or whatever it might be. They said they repented. This is his showing that he repented and he was truly converted. Because what he's doing, he is doing life-endangering hospitality that demonstrates his genuine conversion. What he's doing here is illegal. Highly illegal. And he's demonstrating the authentic presence of the Spirit with true conversion based on him risking his own life to benefit the life of other believers. What you cannot do as a jailer in this time period, and on penalty of death, you cannot eat or feed prisoners. You can't give them food. You certainly can't lax on their punishment. And what is it? He's taking them out of you can't take them out of the jail and walk them around. That's literally, you can't do that. You can't feed them. And you can't nicely socialize with them. Any of these things, if you're caught doing them, you're liable to punishment. Severe punishment. So he's risking all these things to take care of these guys, showing the authentic presence of the Spirit for him to do this. This is meant to demonstrate his authentic conversion. He washed their many wounds. His water source could have been a private fountain at his home or a prison yard fountain. Any way you look at it, this is probably the same place they were baptized. Who exactly is baptized? Well, everyone who heard the message and responded properly. Okay? And what they're doing is they're going through the public ritual that shows their inner commitment, their purification of sins, and their submission to Jesus' authority. Once again, an infant can't do that. So you need to throw out infant baptism. All right, and then verse 34, this shows that hospitality of feeding and eating again. Joy is the sign of salvation and faith. And the indication here, what happens once is legally in Rome, whatever religion the head of the house was, everybody in the household had to be. You couldn't have a wife or a servant or a sister or a son. If you lived in a household, you had to be that religion according to the Roman ideology of that day. So when it says him here, it's talking about them all together as well. But they all rejoice at this, and it's picturing them all coming to faith in Jesus. And remember, we're late into the night at this point in time. We've been going for a few hours, and it's late. Well, now we got verse 35 to 36. The missionaries are going to be discharged from prison. We'll get done after this. 35 through 36. We might stop here. Go ahead.
And when it was day, the magistrates
All right, just real quick here. The men they sent to the police are very most likely the same guys who beat them with rods. Because the lictors were also the people who were constables and policemen. So more than likely the same guys that beat them with rods come, and they're going to tell the jailer to free Paul and Silas. Why would they do this? Possibly two reasons. And we'll stop after this. Why would they do this?
Maybe in response to the earthquake.
That's exactly right. That's one theory. Two theories. Response to the earthquake. Remember, they were really big on earthquakes being bad omens of the divine. They know they put these guys in for religious crimes. We don't want any more divine anger. Get out. That could be one. Two, it simply could have been that they'd only planned on keeping them for one night anyway for the minor offense. This would have humiliated them. This would have appeased the girls' owners and the crowds themselves. Time was served, and they just wanted to get the situation behind them. And so they send the lictors to go release Paul and Silas. But do you think Paul is going to respond nicely? No. And we will get to that next time. There's more to this. And we will get to that next time. Any questions? All right.
How did they baptize? Did they dump them or did
Yeah, immersion. I mean, the baptizo means to immerse. So it's always assumed, and this is what denomination asked. You know that.
Yeah.
So yes, he is a Baptist, immerse them. You know, but that is what the term means, is immerse. You know, it doesn't hurt my feelings if people sprinkle or wash like this. It doesn't hurt my feelings, but the term itself means to immerse. And if you're going to immerse something, you got to put it down and bring it back up again. So that's is a good Southern Baptist with us. Yes, they immersed them. So there you go. Any other good questions?
Well, I just wondered, they didn't have none but you said
Fountains were big. They were much bigger. Yeah, don't think of a bird bath. Think more of a fountain you would get in, and you could ritually wash it if you needed to. It could come up to here at least. You could put them down in if you needed to. Get on your knees and put them down in. You can do that. So, yeah, very good question. All right, nothing else? All right.